On today's Fireside Chat number 10 with attorney Lin Wood, we discuss persecution. You see, recently, Lin Wood discovered that Mercer University's law school would be hosting a Zoom call to discuss all things Lin Wood. Now, much to Lin's horror, he discovered that the people on the Zoom call were saying lies and sharing things that simply were not true about he and his family. Lin Wood is a graduate from Mercer University's law school, and he was shocked and horrified to hear people lying about him on this Zoom call. So Lin decided to record the call, and he decided to confront those that were lying about him directly. And now on today's Fireside Chat number 10 with Lin Wood, we're going to play the audio from that Zoom call so that you can hear it yourself. All right, Thrive Nation, welcome back to another Fireside Chat conversation with Lin Wood. Lin, since we talked to you last, there's been a audio circulating of a call involving Mercer University. Sir, welcome back onto the Fireside Chat, and how are you?
Well, thank you for having me back on, Clay. I always enjoy speaking to you and to your listeners, and I'm doing fine. Continues to be a situation of long days and a lot of things going on, but I'm still hanging tough, and I know you are too.
Well, let's talk about this Mercer phone call that we're going to play on today's show. Give us the circumstances involving the call, and just kind of give us some backstory about the before we play the audio for our listeners.
Well, let me try to give you a thumbnail sketch. Several years ago, because Mercer had been good to me, both in undergraduate school after my mother died, and giving me a scholarship and room and board. In fact, the first year I was there, I didn't have anywhere to go at Christmas, and they let me stay in the dorm by myself. And then they gave me some help financially in law school. They gave me an opportunity to get an education that helped me succeed in life. I found myself in 2016 in a position where I wanted to give something back to the school. So as it turned out, while I had offered to make a donation to the undergraduate school and the law school, they asked that it be to the law school. So I donated $1 million, payable at $100,000 a year for 10 years. 5 years have gone by. I've kept my obligation. Not at my request. Because I did not seek any recognition. They sent me a list of things you could have named for you if you paid a certain amount of money. I told them I didn't want anything named for me. They then on their own decided to name a courtroom at Mercer Law School for me. Now I think I know why. I think they did that so there'd be a binding contract where if I reneged on the deal, they could enforce it, or if I died, they could enforce it against my estate. So the contract makes it look like I made the donation in return for the naming of the school, the courtroom. That's not true. That's what they wanted me to agree to. I found out that Mercer was having a Zoom meeting with the law students conducted by the dean, Kathy Cox, an individual who I have been friends with and have represented in the past. When she was in trouble and needed my help, I gave it to her. I heard they were having a call, and it was about trying to get my name off the courtroom. I found out how to get into the Zoom call, and I decided to listen to it to see what they said about me. I didn't intend to speak. But I did record it because, in case they said something awful, I wanted to know what they had said and document it.
Right.
As the meeting progressed, after singing my praises, Kathy Cox started lying like a dog, excuse my language, about the past year in my life, claiming my law practice had deteriorated. In fact, I got more clients than I want right now, and I wanted to semi-retire last year and handle the Sandman cases. She made a number of statements that were false about a text exchange that I had with her the day before when I found out about the problem. She claimed I was angry. I was not. They were polite texts. She claimed she had to walk to calm me down. That's not true either. She actually responded by saying, "We're concerned about you." They're trying to attack me, claiming that there's something wrong with my mental health. There's not. So she lied about the text, and then she involved my family. She made comments claiming my relationship with my children had deteriorated for years. That's not true. I spoke at Mercer Law School in January, late January of this year. My daughter was there. I I spoke for 2 hours on professionalism, and it's been touted as one of the finest remarks, and I'm not bragging, but people have said it's one of the finest speeches regarding professionalism. And, you know, when you tell me my law career is plunged and I need to go hide under a rock, and that's what I should do, but yet I've been out fighting these false charges made against me by some courts where they're trying to revoke my pro hoc or people filing complaints against me with the bar, I fight back. I fight back with the truth. She seemed to imply that I was a scoundrel because I had the nerve to get out from under the rock and fight back. But what disturbed me the most was that she was lying about the text exchange, and she, in what I can only describe as almost unforgivable, she involved my family. Now, I have had problems with my family, my children, and those have evolved over the last year, and there's a variety of explanations for it, some related to my faith. But that's not the business of your listeners. It's not the business that I want to discuss. My family is private.
Right.
Why in the world Kathy Cox decided to misrepresent it and use it against me and not even tell the truth about it, that was a line she crossed that was too far. That's when I spoke up during the meeting, and I recorded it, and after it was over, I put it on my Telegram social account. Since then, it's obviously gotten a lot of attention because I think people have listened, and I felt like, candidly, I said this the next day after I thought about it, I felt like I'd unexpectedly walked into a meeting of the Communist Party. And, but then I said I feel sorry for these students because they've been brainwashed. Here's the point I would make before the tape is played. I didn't start a problem with Mercer. I love the school. I've been trying to help the school. Mercer, for reasons of their own, which I think are a political agenda, Mercer decided to attack me, and they did it falsely, and they involved my family. Mercer broke it. Mercer's got to fix it. I don't wish ill will on the school now, never have. I've always wanted to help the school. But people are attacking me, Clay, for what I'm trying to do in the past several months.
Right.
What am I doing? Well, we know I support Trump. Some people like Trump. Some people hate Trump. Some people fell for the Trump derangement syndrome propaganda, and they really hate it. Kids aren't Trump fans. So we can have political differences. What else have I been doing? I've been fighting for the First Amendment and the Bill of Rights. Does anybody not want the First Amendment and the Bill of Rights? I've also worked hard to try to make sure we have honest elections. Do people want dishonest elections? I've also been working hard on the issues of child sex trafficking and pedophilia. Do people support pedophilia and child sex trafficking? I think that the main issues that I've been working on are issues that every American should support. But now I'm under vicious attack, not for those issues, but because I support President Trump. It's political. It's kill the messenger because they can't kill the message. They don't like the message. It goes against their agenda. So the Mercer incident kind of is a wrap-up of all of those things in one, actually. And I talked to the school when I did. It was off the seat of my pants. That's the way I usually talk with people. It's honest. It's spontaneous. I was attacked by a student, maybe two. I can't remember how many asked me questions. I was treated with disrespect. I did not show disrespect back. Although I did tell him one time when he told me I was going to have to listen to him, like, listen to me. I said, son, I've been practicing law 43 years. I called him son because the fact is we're talking about young people. They're not even lawyers yet. But they think they know more about the law than I do. They don't really learn about Atticus Finch, the character in To Kill a Mockingbird. They don't seem to be being taught that lawyers don't go with the flow. Lawyers have a duty to advocate zealously for their clients. You want a lawyer that will take on the unpopular position. You want a lawyer that will take on a case even if he loses it because it needs to be brought. You want someone that advocates for government officials to be investigated and prosecuted if there's credible evidence of wrongdoing. I don't know why anyone would disagree with my positions. I don't know why our law students are not being taught more in the vein of an Atticus Finch then they're being taught to be some sort of an activist for one side or the other politically. The profession of law should be nonpartisan. My politics are separate from the way I practice law. I practice law to be a professional. I've never had my professionalism attacked in 43 years until recent weeks. I have practiced law in 27 states. Never had anybody raise a question about my conduct. Never had an ethical complaint filed against me. Now I'm getting people filing complaints against me. It's political.
Lynn, I want to ask you this. A lot of people that reach out to me, a lot of people will listen to the show, and then they want to get the show notes. And so they'll text the word truth to 918-552-5142. Again, they'll text the word truth to 918-552-5142. And when they do, a lot of times they have questions, or I'll actually get on the phone with them and interact with them. And a lot of people have asked me, why? And by the way, the vast majority of people are very appreciative that you are fighting to expose the truth. But a lot of people say, what's his motive? Like, what is driving Lynn Wood to put his career on hold, to put his life on hold, to share the truth? What is his motive? And so I would just like to ask you that before we play the audio. What is your motive, and what are the listeners going to hear when they listen to this audio from the Zoom call held by the folks at Mercer University?
Well, not necessarily in priority, because I'm answering you off the seat of my pants.
Sure.
I love America. When I was 16 years old, I came home and found my mother beaten to death by my father. I grew up in a household of domestic violence. I didn't have a house, didn't have a shirt on my back. My mother went to the morgue. My daddy went to prison. I didn't have a dime in my pocket. All I had was my drive. I didn't realize at the time that Jesus was with me. I felt like it was just me. But America gave me an opportunity to succeed. And in any other country, the same boy at 16 would not have made it. So I love America. I love freedom. That motivates me now. I also love my children. I love my grandson. And I love the fact there'll be generations of my family in years to come. I want them to breathe the fresh air of liberty that I had the opportunity to breathe. So I'm motivated for my family and for other people, my citizens, my fellow citizens, to fight for freedom. I love the Constitution. I always have. It was based on God's word. It's been misinterpreted. I'd like to see some things changed in our law system about it. But I love the Constitution, and I love the rule of law. And I've watched the constitutional rights get deteriorated to the point now where we almost got complete censorship. I've watched the rule of law deteriorate to where we don't even enforce election laws. So I'm fighting for the rule of law, and I'm fighting for the Constitution. I'm fighting for honest elections. I also have learned things that inspire me and motivate me to protect children, because the child sex trafficking is not discussed in the media. The level of pedophilia in high places, business and government, is not discussed in the media. And we need to turn on the lights and expose what's going on for those little children and what they're suffering, where they're now more valuable than oil. And we need to turn on the lights. We got to bring these things out of the darkness. We got to light them up so people can see the truth. So I'm not doing it for money. I haven't taken a dime or raised a dime for myself. I would not. I'm not doing it because I'm crazy. We had that conversation. I have a sound mind.
Right.
If anything, people would say you're crazy to be doing this. You could just sit back, semi-retired, or retire and write, which is what I wanted to do a year ago. But because I am motivated not only by my love of country and family, I am motivated by my love of God. So when I get up in the mornings, I pray on my knees and say, God, tell me what you want me to do today, one day at a time.
Lynn, what are we going
to listen, and I try to do what he says. And so far, I think not only am I doing the things I'm doing because of what I've said, I believe I'm doing God's will. At least as an imperfect man, I'm doing my best to search for it, find it, and do it.
So what are the listeners going to hear? Just kind of some things they should be listening to, or maybe you could tell the listeners who they're going to be hearing on this call, maybe the names of the people or a few of the people, just so people have some context as they listen to this recording of the Zoom call.
They're going to hear primarily from Kathy Cox, who is the dean of the Mercer Law School, someone who I've been a friend with, who I've represented in times of her needs. And they're going to hear her talk about what a great guy I was. And then they're going to hear her shift over and try to tell everybody that I've been weird and I'm mentally ill and I've got problems in the past year, so she could attack me. They're going to hear me speak. They're going to hear at least one student, someone named Braden, a second-year law student. I think he spoke, maybe one other individual. I don't know their names, but they're going to listen to someone who tried to have a conversation with them about what they were doing to me that was false and wrong, how I was being misrepresented, and how, in my view, without saying it directly, the students were not being taught the right way to approach the practice of law. They're being taught not to take on the controversial, only take on the winners, and don't expose corruption in government. Those are not the messages that need to be taught to the generations to come of lawyers. So that's what you're going to hear until they finally turn it off and you hear silence.
Now, Lynn, my final question for you here, just kind of a bonus fry, if we can. And Aaron Antis, you're here with me in the studio, and yes, James, you're with me too. And so I have kind of, if it's okay, I want to ask Lynn a bonus fry question.
Bonus fries,
but I want to get your thoughts on this, Aaron. I feel like leading up to the election, people had felt like, oh my gosh, my puppy might get hit by a car. And then the votes come in, and they go, oh, my puppy did not get hit by the car, and they're feeling good. And then the next morning, when they noticed that the election fraud had occurred, people saw their puppy get hit by a car. And it was really close to them when they saw it happen. I mean, it was like, oh. And I think a lot of people thought, man, here I thought my puppy dodged a car, but it got hit. I mean, I feel it's the emotion right now, as if somebody had their favorite pet, hit by a car. I mean, I think that's how we all feel right now. Would you agree, Aaron?
Yeah, I feel like the puppy dodged a car, and there was a bus coming right behind it, and they got hit by the bus.
Right, and I feel like America is just, we all kind of, I mean, Devin, would you agree? Is this kind of the combined feeling right now?
Yeah, it's just a punch in the gut.
James, would you describe that? I mean, would you agree? I mean, that's kind of how people are feeling right now?
Yeah, and then the other people are just like, well, it's not my puppy.
Yeah.
And
so, Lynn, I want to ask you. Yeah, I just want to ask you. What give us some encouragement, or tell us how our listeners should be processing this, Lynn.
Well, I think that your analogy is understandable, but I would say that what's going on right now is people trying to figure out whether their dog got run over or not. And they're getting different versions of, well, your dog got run over. No, it didn't.
That's a good point.
Maybe it did. Maybe it didn't.
Yeah.
So I think there's a great uncertainty.
Right.
People don't know who to trust. People don't know whether there's truth or lies being told to them. We get a lot of photoshopped misinformation. We get, and what I think you'll learn, we're going to learn more about, are deep fakes, where you get videos that appear to be reality that are not. So I think we're in a situation of uncertainty, and uncertainty breeds fear, fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
That's why I've urged, the times that I've had a chance to speak, I've tried to urge people to have hope, to not be in fear, to be fearless, to trust God, to keep their faith in God, and to wait on the Lord. He's going to act on his time, and when God acts, he only acts for good. So the ending will be a good one. In my strong faith, it tells me that. If I could say one other thing, though, about this tape you're going to hear. It's one thing to lie about me. I can tolerate that up to a point. But this dean involved my children and used some issues that exist with my children over the past year that may be a matters of politics and may be a matters of faith, because of my faith. To bring my children into this public discussion is almost to the point to me of being unforgivable, except I try to love all and forgive all. But, kind of like God, you got to ask for forgiveness and admit that you did something wrong. What this dean did to try to use a misrepresentation in part of my children and my relationship with my children, it crossed a line. I always tell people, don't mess with Richard Jewell, don't mess with my puppies, and don't mess with my children. In the past year, other people have tried to use my children in ways that I felt were causing my children to not honor me, a violation of one of God's 10 commandments. I had some former guys I practiced law with as in an office sharing arrangement, and they were, I thought, clearly trying to get my children to turn against me. And I said to them one time, I said, "You're not messing with me, you're messing with Almighty God." And they are. But now they took out a lawsuit, and they're trying to tell the public that I think I'm God. That's the level of misinformation, of false information that is being used to attack me. But listen, I'm a big boy. I can take care of myself. But it's being done to many, many, many other people in this country who are scared when it happens, who don't know how to defend themselves.
Right.
All I can say to those people is go to the Bible. It answers every question in life. Look at Ephesians 6. The greatest weapon you have against an attack, which is basically an attack by the devil, because we're dealing with not the flesh, but powers and principalities, is to tell the truth. Truth is your best defense to the attack, and to be fearless because you're right, be righteous. So thanks for letting me add that in. I think it puts things into context a little bit more, because I'm not a troublemaker. I loved the school. I still do. But what they did to me yesterday in that Zoom call a couple of days ago was wrong, and it really was highlighted when they not only lied directly about me in the last year when my practice has flourished, not gone under a rock, but they got my children involved, Clay, and that's just a line that nobody should cross. We can have our difference politically. We can have our differences legally, but you don't go into people's private lives with their children.
Lynn, we've had so many people reach out to us, and they've wanted to share their support and show their support, and they wanted to hear directly from you about this Zoom call here, again featuring the dean of Mercer University's Law School. And so, thank you for clearing your schedule to make it possible to be on the show, and I can't wait to talk to you again soon, sir.
God bless you, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to discuss the issue with you.
Take care.
We had a space up on the third floor, but it really wasn't all that well built out as a courtroom at the time. We needed a second courtroom, and so it was decided at that point to finish building out a new courtroom on the third floor and to name it for Lynn Wood. So all of those terms were worked out, and as new lawyers that you all are going to be, a contract was signed to those terms, that he would make a gift of $1 million. That was his consideration, and the law school would name a courtroom for him. And that was the exchange that the law school made for his consideration. So you've all had contracts now. That's the most basic form of a contract. Somebody gives something, somebody gets something. There's two sides to a contract. Both sides for the last 5 years have lived up to the terms of that contract. There are lots of cases around the country where these types of agreements have been challenged, and they have most frequently been upheld by courts as binding agreements. Very simple kind of agreements, but binding agreements nevertheless. So that's first thing I want you to know, is that the way the courtroom came about was not that somebody one day decided, hey, Lynn Wood is a very successful defamation lawyer, let's honor him, let's put his name on a courtroom, that we could just decide tomorrow to take it off. It's much more complicated, because we actually have a binding agreement that contains terms that we would have to be breaking an agreement if we decide to take his name off, because he has lived up to his terms of the agreement. That agreement did not contain any terms that some schools put into donor agreements that say, for example, we'll keep your name on there for 10 years, or we will, or some term. We will keep your name on there unless you commit some conduct or offense we deem inappropriate or inconsistent with the mission and vision of this institution. That sometimes those are called morals clauses or conduct unbecoming type language. So we're having a little contract drafting session here, and there was no provision put into this contract that gave the university an out that said, we'll name this courtroom for you as long as we think you're doing good things, or as long as we like what you're doing, or as long as we think you're a reputable lawyer. There was no language in there whatsoever like that. So it was just a very simple, cut and dried agreement. You give money to the law school, use it any way you want to, and the law school will name a courtroom for you. So those are the first considerations that have obviously been under consideration by the president. Those kind of agreements get signed by the president of the university and the donor. They don't even get signed by the dean or by Ms. Leslie Cadle, who is our fundraiser. Those get signed by the president of the university. And so this decision to do anything with respect to the name of the courtroom is not a decision for me to make. It's not a decision for the faculty to vote on or make. It's not a decision for the student body to make. It is a decision for the president and, based on a conversation I had yesterday with the president, for the trustees of the university. Because as President Underwood said to me yesterday, this university has been around for 188 years, and we've never taken the name of any person off of a building after we named it for them. And so he believes, and the way he is approaching this, is that the university trustees need to have a discussion about this and decide from a policy perspective, are they going to come up with a policy that would authorize him to take names off of a building after they're named for somebody, and under what circumstances would the university do that? So he, at this point, is not ready to go make that decision at all, because he has not yet had a meeting with the trustees. Throughout the fall, we have been discussing this situation. I have been monitoring Lynn Wood's Twitter account for probably since I've been here, because I've known Lynn Wood for probably 25 years, at least. My husband has probably known him for 40 years. They've had cases together and against each other, and have been friends for all of those years. I actually hired Lynn Wood to represent me when I was Secretary of State, because I had to deal with an organization in the state that was defaming me, because I had fired one of my employees in the Secretary of State, and they were mad about it. And so they took out after me and started writing things about me that were false. And so I had to hire a defamation lawyer, and I thought Lynn was the best there was. And so I hired him to represent me, to get those people to sort of cease and desist. And, you know, he got their attention, needless to say. I think he's been a great lawyer, a very successful lawyer, and I would think anybody pretty much would say one of the very most successful defamation and libel lawyers in the country. And because I have known him for so long, and I have watched his Twitter feed, and over the 3.5 years that I've been here at Mercer, and he was one of the first people to congratulate me when I got the dean's job. He was so happy I was coming here. Over the last 3.5 years, he sends me texts, you know, about random things he's doing. I go and visit with him about these gifts that he's making. You know, I've kept in fairly close contact with him. But I have observed noticeable changes in his conduct and behavior over the last year that concern me for his wellness, that concern me for his health, because what I have observed is not what I believe to be characteristic of him. his personality, his quality of legal work. All of these things really concern me about what is going on with him. And I'm no psychologist or psychiatrist, but it is really troubling to me to see the significant sort of downturn. His Twitter account went from the summer of, really just a supercharged Trump supporter, which he has been since 2016. I had lots of discussions with him in 2016 because he was a Trump supporter then. He did not like Hillary Clinton. I had lots of arguments with him about that. So he was not just a, come to the party lately Trump supporter, as some people have tried to make him out to be. He supported Trump very strongly since 2016. But since the summer of this past summer, his Twitter account just went from the supercharged Trump supporter to the angry Trump supporter to the insane to the violent tweets. And I've never seen things like that come out of him before. And to now have had, as many of you may know, a court in Delaware has revoked his Pro Hac Vici designation. You have to get admitted to practice in another state. Courts have to approve you, and a court revoked that so that he cannot represent a client in that state. And the court reamed him for his erratic work in other states, post on social media, and his, quote, shoddy legal work. And, a quality lawyer would be probably, in my view, so embarrassed by that they would probably go under a rock to try to repair their reputation. And it shocked me that he didn't do that he, sort of argued back with the judge and like, hey, what's wrong? Made a typo here and there. And it certainly was not a typo here and there. He's got sanctions motions pending against him in Michigan. And he has now put out in the social media stream, whatever platform he's on now, that he claims that the State Bar of Georgia may be about to take disciplinary action against him. So, this is all extremely troubling as to what is going on with him. So there is that issue, and President Underwood and I have talked about what kind of issue is going on with him there. He's had not the closest relationship with his children over the years, and so I don't know whether his family is not able to get him to some help or into a situation of better wellness. I don't have any knowledge about what's going on there, but I'm concerned about that. And so I had not heard from him at all since October, whereas I used to get texts from him every month or two until yesterday. And he sent me texts yesterday that were pretty mad. He had heard from somebody that we were thinking about taking his name off the courtroom, and he was pretty angry about it. And he reminded me, that he stood up for me when people were defaming me. And, I'm glad he texted me because it gave me the opportunity to say, hey, my husband Mark and I are really worried about you, and I'm glad to hear from you. And yes, we are getting a lot of concerned alumni, students, and faculty about what is going on with you. But no decision has been made. And the president says he is going to be thoughtful and patient in trying to make this decision. And so, he went back and forth with me a little bit, and I think calmed down when I, told him that no decision had been made and that I'm concerned about him and that kind of thing.
Dean Cox?
Yes.
Dean Cox, you're not accurately portraying the text messages that I sent you.
Oh, Lynn's on the call.
I am on the call, and I am embarrassed for the profession of law that you're practicing right now.
Okay. Well,
You
please
did
speak
not.
to it.
You did not come to me and ask me at any time over the past year, express to me any concerns about me. You're taking what has been used as propaganda to attack me without even giving me the courtesy of due process. I want your students to keep in mind the following. I have exercised my right of free speech. Some people believe in Trump, some people don't. I hope we all believe in the right of free speech. I have also actively sought as a lawyer to pursue evidence.
This meeting is being recorded.
Overwhelming evidence of what I believe was election fraud, both in the state of Georgia and across the nation. I've been joined in that investigation with a number of very skilled and professional lawyers. I've also been joined in that investigation with General Michael Flynn, who served his country for 30 years. He's a fine man. The only other thing I've done is that I have been privy to receiving information which I investigated for credibility that would show some very dark corruption in high-ranking members of our government. I would think it is a lawyer's duty, when presented with that information and deemed credible, to bring it to the public's attention. I've also brought it to the attention of the Secret Service. I personally resent your comments about my mental health. I have been to my physician on a regular basis, and my mental health is sound. What did change with my children, and what has changed with some people's attitude toward me, is that 2.5 years ago, I, as I say it, got tapped on the shoulder by God, and I became a believer and a follower of Jesus Christ. Some people don't like that. Some people think that when you follow Jesus, you're crazy. They even call Jesus crazy. So, I'll remind everyone here, and then I'll be quiet. Back in the days of Jesus, he threatened the power of Caesar because millions of people were following him. Caesar had him brought up on a false charge of blasphemy for Caesar's agenda. And on that one agenda, they whipped the crowd into a frenzy. And people said, he's crazy. He's guilty. Let's kill him. They did. But in the process of that frenzy, they overlooked the body of his life's work. That he had healed millions of people. That he had performed more miracles, and as the disciple John said, there wasn't enough paper to record them all. So when you now attack me because I may not be on the right side of your political views, I think you ought to stop and think about the body of my life's work. The Delaware judge, the home state of Joe Biden, sua sponte, raised questions about pro hoc vice, and I responded and said I did not want to create a problem for Carter Page, who was my client, and I would be happy to simply withdraw my pro hoc request. The judge agreed. And then, despite that agreement, which I made not because of wrongdoing, but because I did not want my interest to be ahead of the client's, I put Carter's interest ahead of mine. The judge nonetheless issued an order. And he pointed out in that order that I had a lawsuit in Georgia. I had had a lawsuit dismissed in Georgia, and I pointed out to the judge that lawyers should not be disciplined for losing a motion to dismiss. I was the plaintiff. The second issue the judge raised was that there were mistakes in pleadings in Michigan and Wisconsin. I was not a counsel of record in either of those cases. The city of Detroit intervened in the Michigan case and did so to bring sanctions against Sidney Powell and me and the other lawyers. I was not counsel of record. I didn't prepare the pleadings. I had told Sidney that she could use me in the case if she needed a trial lawyer. And I pointed out to the Delaware judge that, for goodness sakes, if lawyers make mistakes, I don't think we want to set the standard of perfection that would allow lawyers to be penalized for that. I believe the Delaware ruling was political. The State Bar of Georgia has not moved to rescind my license. I've had 2 complaints filed, which I will be responding to in the next week to 10 days. In my view, they are frivolous and they are brought for political purposes to attack the messenger. You see, if you can't attack the message, you try to attack the messenger. My children and I have been alienated over the past year. I believe that, as Jesus said when they asked, "Do you come to unite us?" He said, "No, I came to divide you, father against son, son against father, 5 brothers and sisters, 3 against 2, 2 against 3. He came to divide us between believers and non-believers. My children, I do not believe, from what they tell me, have formed a faith and belief in God yet, so we are divided. But if you saw the exchange of text and emails that I have sent to my children periodically, expressing my love for them, while they were concerned about my mental health, they haven't come to see me. They haven't come to check on me. Neither have you, Dean Cox. So, if you want to take my name off of the building or the courtroom, I told you in my email and my text, and I'll be glad to read it because you characterized it as angry, and it was not. I have it in front of me. It was polite. I simply said, if you want to wash yourselves clean of me for the agenda at the moment, then you ought to make your hands completely clean and give me my money back. I don't want to see Mercer embroiled in this controversy, but your lawyers, now and in the future, have to be zealous. They have to pursue truth, even if truth is unpopular. They have to seek justice, even if justice ends up being denied by a court or a jury. What you're doing in trying to now attack me is you're sending the wrong message to your law school students and to your profession. Don't take on the unpopular cause. Don't take on the controversial cause. Don't exercise your right to free speech. Don't pursue evidence that points to an illegal election. And don't ever reveal corruption at levels that include the Vice President and the Supreme Court Justice, Chief Justice. I am happy to provide to Mercer University a several-hour interview from a former member of the Department of Homeland Security, a whistleblower, a man who had courage even over the threat of death to his wife and his family, that documented everything I have said about Chief Justice Roberts, Vice President Pence, and many other people. Do you want me to send that to Mercer so that you can see the truth and evaluate yourself whether there is corruption in high places? You think my behavior in the past year has been odd. I disagree with you. My behavior in the last year has been in the finest traditions of the profession of law. It was only last January when I spoke at Mercer for 2 hours in a speech that was online, and most everyone that's seen it said it stood for the highest principles of our profession. Subsequent to that time, I settled a case for Nicholas Salmon against CNN for an undisclosed amount of money. Subsequent to that time, I settled a case with the Washington Post for an undisclosed amount of money. And yet you tell me my law career has gone downhill. I challenge you because you are not telling the truth. You have slandered me in this meeting. I'm ashamed that you would do that behind my back in front of the people that are my colleagues. I think you and Mercer University need to stop and think twice about what you're doing, because I think that you are jeopardizing the integrity of your school and the integrity of our profession.
I think they're going to rename the courtroom.
They're what? They're what?
Everybody please mute your microphones.
Dean Cox, I hope I got my words in. I don't really have anything else to add to it. I think I've made my points. But I'm happy to answer any question that you have or any question that any student in the school or faculty member has. In the past year, I have purchased 3 properties in South Carolina where I now am building a bed and breakfast, where I'm running an equine facility and a rescue facility for rescue puppies. And you tell me my behavior has been inappropriate? I don't think you know the facts, but I think that you've allowed yourself to get caught up in the propaganda designed to attack the messenger because people either don't like the truth of my message or they disagree with my message. Everybody that wants to be a lawyer should support me and not demean me and try to make me something that I am not now and have not been over the 44 years of my law practice. I'm the same lawyer in person now that I was then. The only thing that's really changed has been my firm and growing faith in God. Mercer University should support that faith. It did when I was there as an undergraduate and as a law student. So I'm happy to answer any questions that y'all have.
Mr. Wood, this is Braden Copeland. I'm a 2L, and I just have a question, or maybe something that you could explain, and that is how, in the way that you've behaved on social media and what you've posted on social media vis-a-vis calling people liars and calling for a firing squad for the Vice President of the United States. How is that behavior? It's exemplary of the way, at least I believe, this institution should be teaching new law students to behave.
Have you looked back at how the Patriots spoke and conducted themselves in 1776? Sometimes you use rhetorical hyperbole, Braden. I did not, because I know the law of defamation, I did not call for the assassination or the death of Vice President Pence. I made a comment that they opened the doors to the Capitol. I said, they're all traitors. Get the firing squads out, Pence first. Now, just in the past 3 months, our government has noted publicly that we still utilize firing squads. Treason has as one penalty a firing squad. I believe, as a matter of opinion based on fact, that Vice President Pence has committed treason. I have documented evidence that he also did that in 2017 with Rod Rosenstein. Treason is treason. For me to make the point of how strongly I felt about the fact that he was guilty of treason, I used rhetorical hyperbole, suggesting not that somebody go out and shoot him, but that he be subject to the penalty that the law imposes for treason. I don't control firing squads, only the government does. So I think you've looked at some of the things that have been said about that tweet, and you're influenced by the interpretations that others have placed on it. I have not been charged with any crime. I have met extensively with the Secret Service. There's no charge brought against me. I'm not a threat to anybody. I've lived in a life of nonviolence, and I have always said, and in my tweets, when I set up #FightBackFoundation to protect the Constitution, because I felt like it was under attack and we needed to make sure we didn't lose it now or in the future. I made it very clear that when I used the term fight back, it wasn't physical. I believe, though, that in what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. believed in. I believe in nonviolent civil disobedience. You won't find anything in my life where I've ever made any statement that could be construed to ask for violence on another person. That's not who I am, haven't been, and I'm not now. So, let me say one more thing. You said another number. You said another You said I.
Going forward is going to be productive.
Well, I think you're talking to the person that's on trial. You ought to want to hear from me.
We should behave like 1776 revolutionaries.
No,
and that's fair.
I'm not saying how you should behave, but I remember there were some people that fought for our freedom against the King of England. I have, if Kathy has looked over my tweets, as she said she has, months ago, I said that I felt like we were in a color revolution as I watched the increasing censorship, which now has become almost complete censorship. I thought we were in a color revolution that was not designed to elect an official, but was in effect designed to overthrow our government. Now, if I see that happening...
Stop you right there, because can you just give me 1 second, please? So this conversation today is about our law school. This isn't really.
It's about Lynn Wood. It's about Lynn Wood.
Yes, sir, it is. It's not how Lynn Wood pertains to our law school.
It's about my name and my reputation, which Kathy Cox has just besmirched with false statements about me.
Well, it's about your name, yes, sir. It's about your reputation. It's also about your actions. Now,
my actions have been nonviolent, and they have been consistent with the rule of law. I have advocated the rule of law and the Constitution all my life.
I would appreciate if you gave me the opportunity to speak.
I'm happy to do so.
Let me kind of wrap it up here.
Why do you want to wrap it up, Kathy? I'm just telling you the truth. Don't you want your students to hear the truth?
I'm glad you joined us, Lynn, and I'm glad that you were able
Well, let me answer. I didn't mean to interrupt Braden, and I'm happy to let him finish, and I'll answer anybody's questions. I have nothing to hide. I have told the truth. When I have said that people are lying, that's been the truth, and I have documented evidence to support it. As you said, I'm a defamation lawyer. I don't make statements that are accusatory if I don't have proof of it, because I know what it does to people, and I wouldn't do that to someone else. I've seen it done to my clients.
These students know, because many of them contacted me in reading a lot of your tweets over since the fall, that my earlier messages to them were that we are lawyers. We defend the First Amendment as well. We defend even speech that we find offensive, and that, we're taking their comments under advisement. I'm sending them and sharing them with the president, who will make this decision with the Board of Trustees. But that as lawyers, we understand political speech, even when somebody finds it reprehensible, if that would be the case. And the situation we're in now is not too different, but that there is no decision made about the courtroom, has not been any decision made about the courtroom.
Kathy, I told you in my text, Kathy, I didn't want to create trouble for Mercer, and if y'all wanted to take my name off, that was fine with me, that if you wanted to wash your hands of me. But I did say that if you want to wash your hands, that you ought to give me back the money I've given you that led to the courtroom contract being issued. I'm not here to get Mercer University embroiled in a controversy. I love the school. That's why I volunteered to give the school $1 million. And nothing has changed about my feelings about the school. But what does hurt me, professionally and personally, that this conversation has been going on about me and nobody's bothered to call me or talk to me about it. Nobody's bothered to get my side. You're making statements about my mental health that are medically proven to be false, Kathy. You've omitted my faith in God and the reality that it does divide people, sometimes, sadly, even families. But I could have shown you the numerous emails and texts that I have sent to my children. Now, I have made my point clear. This doesn't have to go on and get Mercer embroiled in controversy. Give me back the money I gave you and take my name off. But if down the road you find that what I have said turns out to be true, how are you going to feel?
Well, certainly that's why the president has, in his discussions with me, has not at all wanted to take any kind of knee-jerk reaction. He also, being a lawyer, wants to understand what is going on, and this will be a ongoing, thoughtful, patient discussion that is not going to be made quickly.
Well, the problem I have with that, Kathy, is that I listened to you and I recorded what you said about me. You didn't investigate it. You didn't have the courtesy to give me due process to explain my side of the story, and you made very serious accusations, including referring to me as insane. Now, you should know better as a lawyer that if you're going to make that type of factual statement, you need to have some hard evidence to support it other than the disagreement with the words I speak. Oh, I recorded. You said I've been acting with it. I've got the recording. We don't have to fight about that. But I'm disappointed in you personally and professionally that you would engage in what amounts to be a behind the scenes witch hunt without giving a person who is a lawyer to come and sit and talk with you and to answer your questions and to show you the evidence. Would you like to see and have me send to the president of Mercer the multi-hour interview of a legitimate whistleblower that talks about the level of pedophilia and even attempts to murder other Supreme Court justices and efforts to overthrow our government in 2017? Would you like for me to put that whistleblower's evidence in front of Mercer so that you can fully evaluate whether my accusations were baseless or whether they were in the finest tradition of a lawyer seeking to reveal corruption in government, albeit at the highest levels of government? Would you like for me to send it to you, Dean Cox?
I'll be happy to receive it.
I will send it to you next week. And then you can expose it, and maybe you will join me in demanding that there be an investigation into the actions of the vice president, into the actions of Rod Rosenstein, Hillary Clinton as they relate to Justice Scalia with respect to the adoption of children through Jeffrey Epstein. I've got the evidence, Dean Cox. I just don't think that people want to accept it as true because it is shocking. But the truth has to come out. As they say in the Bible, every lie will be revealed. So I'm happy to reveal that truth to the school, and I'll send it next week. But as far as my name goes, I think you and I and the president should have a discussion so that I have a complete understanding of how the school, a law school, has handled this situation, and whether you believe in free speech, whether you believe in due process, whether you believe in fundamental fairness, because if you don't, I do not want my name associated with your school. I'll be happy to take it. I've told Dean Cox to give me back the $500,000 I paid so far. Take my name off. You've already hurt me. You've already hurt my reputation with these actions. You've already hurt my reputation in the comments you've made with people today. I'm happy to send you the evidence, including all of the filings that have been made on election fraud and these frivolous complaints against me that have been lodged, and to send you the whistleblower evidence. I'll send that to you next week. But you can end the misery now. Simply, we can have a meeting with me and you and the president, and y'all can agree to take my name off, refund the money I gave you. I tried to help you. Apparently, when I spoke out in a way that y'all didn't agree with, you didn't need my help anymore, and you didn't want my name anymore, and so let's just go back to square one, and then the controversy will be over, won't it?
Mr. Wood, this is great again. I would just like to add, I don't know that you might be right as rain and have wonderful evidence and everything about your position. At least for me personally, what I think I've struggled with is just the way that you've comported yourself. And then finally, regarding due process, I believe this was sort of a fact-finding kind of presentation meeting, and I am as certain as you can hear my voice that you are going to be given your chance to explain this. We just hadn't gotten to that point in the process, I don't believe. I don't know. I'm not directly part of the process.
Who was that? Tell me, who was that? Who just spoke?
Braden Copeland. I'm a 2L.
Well, Braden, let me say something, son. I'm 68 years old, been practicing law almost 44 years. But what I heard you say was you didn't like the way I acted. I don't know what you're comparing that to, that you would have done it differently. You know, we're a country where people have freedom. I did not advocate the murder of the vice president. You see, that's the misinterpretation. That's an interpretation that you've placed on my speech. I know exactly what I wrote. I know exactly what I wrote. I believed when I wrote it, it was rhetorical hyperbole. Nobody would believe that I could command a firing squad. I was making a point that the vice president was guilty of treason, and I'm telling you what you don't want to hear. I have hard, credible evidence to support my statement. Do you want to see it before you jump to the conclusion that I'm wrong?
Mr. Wood, you've had plenty of opportunities to present all of your accusations to federal courts across this country.
I did. No, I didn't. No, wait a minute. No, I didn't.
No, you listen to me for a second.
No, wait a minute, son. No, wait a minute. You just made a statement. Let me just respond. I have filed 2 lawsuits with respect to Georgia. One of them was dismissed. One of them was dismissed for lack of standing. Those lawsuits were not about fraud. They were about an interpretation that says you can't change the rules of a federal election held in a state except by the legislature. In Georgia, it was done by the Secretary of State in a consent agreement. I challenge those legally. Sidney Powell has filed a number of lawsuits regarding election fraud. I've seen the massive evidence that supports it. It's also supported by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. So, I told her I would sign on to those cases when she asked in case she needed a trial lawyer. In none of those cases has any court reviewed that evidence. They've thrown it out for reasons dealing with standing. You should look. Now you listen to me, please. I'm trying to be polite to you. Go watch. You didn't let me finish, son. You didn't let me finish. Go watch the movie Killer Chains. Look at Judge Amy Totenberg's order from October of 2020, where she delineated all of the areas where the Dominion machines were susceptible to fraud and concluded in October of 2020, it's not a matter of if it will happen, it's a matter of when it will happen. It happened 3 weeks later. I know the facts, and I haven't said anything.
We're not going to settle all of the election lawsuits today or the fraud lawsuits.
Well, I'm being accused of filing frivolous lawsuits, and nobody looks at them and knows the facts.
We're going to wrap this up.
I'm still ready. I interrupted the young man, Kathy. Let him. I apologize, sir. Go ahead and make your point.
Very quickly. I'll let you finish, Daniel. If you care about this law school, if you care about a reputation, then you will disassociate from us. Because if you truly don't have any mental health issues, then you will realize what this is doing to our law schools. You're not only affecting your reputation with your false allegations, you're affecting all of our reputations. We are going to graduate from this law school. Okay, when people research this school, they're going to see your name on the forward. Okay, if you truly care about the school, take your name off of our courtroom.
All right.
Get out with Dean Cox.
All right.
Get out with the president. Get it done.
All right. Let me say this to you. If Kathy goes back and looks at my Twitter page, and I believe I said it on Parler too, I had serious concerns about our freedoms, our constitutional rights. And I said that I pledged my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor to my fellow citizens to make sure that we didn't lose our freedoms. If in the process so far I've had my life threatened by many people, serious threats, I've certainly taken a significant financial hit. And my sacred honor has been basically destroyed. But if you go back, look at a Paul Harvey YouTube video of what happened to the signers of the Declaration of Independence, who took the same pledge of their lives, their fortunes, and their mutual and their sacred honors. Many of them lost their lives. Many of them lost their fortunes. Many of them lost their sacred honor. But because of what those men did in 1776, you, young man, breathe the fresh air of liberty every day. And you ought to applaud someone who has the willingness to put it all on the line so that you can continue and your children and your grandchildren can continue to breathe the fresh air of liberty. Because if you're not willing to put it all on the line, you're going to lose it. Look at what's happening in this country right now.
I served in the Army. Army for 10 years.
Then you ought to know that your duty is to defend, protect the Constitution of the United States and the people of the United States. And that's exactly what I've tried to do. We just disagree right now on who the enemy is. That's our right as Americans.
Because listen, your information led to an attack.
No, it did not. I didn't tweet that until after that had already happened, young man.
No,
it didn't lead to.
It's aggregate.
It couldn't aggravate. You can't aggravate something by posting something hours after it happened.
Your misinformation aggregated and built up.
Oh, come on. Are you serious? I didn't ask anybody to go to Washington, D.C. I didn't go myself. I didn't say anything to anybody about going anywhere up there and doing anything. I commented after the fact. I do think I understand how it works. When you say I instigated something, when I wrote something hours after it happened, I think you got it backwards.
It's you, Sidney Powell, Rudy Giuliani, everyone who's spreading false information about this election.
I'm happy to send you all of the evidence that we have, and then when you've looked at it, then tell me if you think we've been spreading false information. I disagree with you. I've seen the evidence. You haven't.
Right. So go ahead and share that evidence with us and
I'm going to send. I've tried to present it. Sydney's tried to present it in federal court, and they won't let her. It wasn't in my two cases. My cases dealt with the law about the legislature only can set the requirements of a federal election in a state, not the Secretary of State by consent agreement. The fraud cases have not been my cases. I've been offered to let Sydney use my name if she needed to, but in the two cases where we're being attacked, we weren't even of record. There's an agenda at work here. I know what it is. Attack the messenger. But if you text me, Kathy, if you'll text me and give me the addresses, next week I will deliver to you all of the evidence of election fraud, all of the evidence related to these charges being made against me that are frivolous, and I'll send you this multi-hour tape of the whistleblower. I would recommend that everybody at Mercer Law School listen to that whistleblower's testimony, and then you judge me.
Thrive Nation, I'm not really sure how we transitioned from that to part two of today's Thrive Time show, but I do feel the need to share a Bible verse with you from chapter 5 of Matthew. Against Matthew chapter 5, verse 11. It reads, "Blessed are ye when men shall revile you and persecute you, and shall say all manner of evil against you falsely for my sake." So from how I view it, how I view the world, how I view the Bible, as I understand it, Lin Wood is a very blessed man, and we're so fortunate to have bold truth tellers out there like Lin Wood during this tough time in American history. But now on part two of today's show, we are going to interview Dr. Mark Sherwood. Dr. Mark Sherwood, and he's going to share with you practical tips for how to take care of your body and your mind. What is the best way to take care of your body and your mind as many of you are going through a trying time, as you're seeing your First Amendment rights to peaceably gather, as you're seeing your rights to worship as you please, as you're seeing your rights to open your businesses, you're seeing these rights taken away from you. Many of us are experiencing feelings of frustration or loss. And Mark Sherwood, the doctor, joins us to share some very practical tips on how you can help to maintain and even optimize your health. All this and more on part two of today's edition of the Thrive Time Show on your radio and podcast download. All right, Thrive Nation, I think that the collective emotional state in America right now is somewhere between not good, bad, or it's almost like a collective feeling of regret or hopelessness. Or I see people saying, I've talked to people who've said, Clay, my kids are outspoken socialists. What decisions did I make that produced kids that are outspoken socialists? I see people on the conservative side who say, I know that there's irrefutable proof that election fraud occurred. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is now in the White House. Mm-hmm. And people are saying, what can we do? What can be done? And I keep telling the listeners, I say, well, there's a couple things you can do. One, as it relates to Joe Biden being the man in the White House, being the president, there is absolutely nothing you can do. Step two, as it relates to your emotional state and your personal family, you can pray and pray some more. But, I mean, at the end of the day, there's nothing that you, the listener right now, or that I, the host, can do beyond to say, hey, here's the facts and why certain people did not act or why certain people are going to act later. I can't speak to that. I can just present you with the facts, and then we all have to sort of emotionally deal with this. And so what I'm gonna relate this to, Aaron, right now is the breakup. The breakup.
Oh, yeah.
You're dating this girl. James, you know, it's a girl. It's a winner, chicken dinner. You are convinced that this will be your dream woman, or maybe it was your dream woman. Mm-hmm. And then you discover that she is dating another man.
Oh, that's not good.
And she tries to play it off. She says, we might be in touch, or no, it wasn't what it appears. We're just, no, it's
Lies.
not. And then she says, maybe we'll get back together in the future. It's not you, it's me.
Lies.
And now it's been
some time.
It's been Dr. Mark. You can probably you probably can't relate to this because you're a beautiful man. But it's now 17 months after the marriage, figuratively speaking, here of your ex-girlfriend to another man, and part of you still thinks maybe she's gonna call.
She might call.
And so you look down at your phone. Anytime the phone rings, you're like, maybe it's her. Maybe Amanda is calling to fix this right now. And you even answer the phone. It's your good friend Chuck. He calls. Boop, 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 boop. You go, Amanda? And he says, no, this is Chuck. Why are you saying her name? It's clearly over. Now we're into the 34th month. They're married with kids, and she has sent you a cease and desist and a letter from an attorney that says you're not allowed to call me again. And still, you're going, maybe there's a chance. And I feel like that's how people feel right now. And rather than moving on and saying, if God wants to change the situation of who's in the White House, he'll do that.
Yep.
Rather than just accepting that it's no longer in our hands, there's somebody out there who's living in fear and despair, and so they're going with the ice cream only diet. They're just saying, just ice cream only. That's what I'm doing. So with that being said, Dr. Mark Sherwood, welcome on to the Thrive Time Show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here.
So, brother, walk us through why is the emotional state of fear, regret, and loss not good for the human body? As a doctor, why is it not good for the human body?
So first, we want to understand simple physiology. In our autonomic nervous system, there are two responses that take place. One is the freeze, flight, or fight side, which that's going to be the stress side. The other one is going to be the relaxation side, which is called the parasympathetic nervous system side. We're supposed to be in balance. So fear in itself is a normal emotion, as we know. But when it becomes chronic, which it is right now, and you clearly laid out with the girlfriend illustration, we didn't get our way in some things, so we have this perpetual wonder, in grief and the breakup, and I hate this the way it is, and I'm wondering what the world will be like in 15 years or 15 months or 5 days. So fear takes a hold of our body, and we perpetually operate in that freeze, fight, or flight mode. And when we do that over time, the body has no ability, and I said that, zero ability to fight from an immune system standpoint. Because when the life of the body is under threat, the stress side is going to take control, and your very survival is dependent upon your existence, and we know that. So forget the virus, forget any virus, for anything that comes upon us, parasitic or bacterial or viral, the body can't fight that because it's putting all of its effort into just survival. So chronic fear is going to decapitate, and I use that word intentionally, our immune system. It's going to cause us to lose sleep, which is going to cause cortisol to go up. That's going to cause belly fat to come on us. That's going to drive inflammatory pathways. That's going to drive depressive pathways. That's going to drive eating behaviors, and the beat goes on. We get worse and worse and worse with all these comorbidities that lead to problems long term. So we can say clearly that chronic stress, chronic fear drives disease processes.
Now, what's your website real quick if people want to verify that you are, in fact, not psychologically impaired?
Well, I don't know if it's going to verify if I'm not psychologically impaired, but certainly it's Sherwood.tv, and that links to everything we've got. So Sherwood.tv.
Okay, now, if people are stressed out, do you recommend, if people are dealing with fear right now, fear for the country, feelings of regret that are lost, that their guy didn't win the White House, do you recommend that people should drink a lot of caffeine late at night while watching Red Dawn on repeat? Or what do you feel like people should be doing on a practical level? Now, again, Aaron and I, we had kind of a discussion going, and Aaron says, I don't think you telling all the listeners to watch Red Dawn exclusively while drinking caffeine late at night is, in fact, the best move. But you'll have to run that by my doctor, Dr. Sherwood, because Dr. Sherwood is your doctor, correct?
Yeah, Dr. Neal, his wife, is my doctor.
Okay, so you said I don't think he would probably recommend a caffeine-only and Red Dawn-only diet of – I mean, if you have not seen Red Dawn – Aaron says that's not what we need to recommend for the listeners today.
Not good. Neither of them would recommend
And I said, as a backup plan, what about watching Schindler's List? And he said, not getting any better. So, Dr. Mark, would you agree that drinking copious amounts of caffeine while watching Schindler's List and Red Dawn on repeat is probably not the move now?
I would concur wholeheartedly and add one more thing. Don't drink a lot of red wine while you're watching those either.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so what should we be doing if the default recommendation that I want to do, watch Red Dawn over and over, is not if you're killing what I, from a non-medical perspective, just want to do. What should people do right now? Honestly, what should they do to take the edge off in a healthy way?
Well, I think we have to go with the principle that we all know. It's a biblical principle that you simply become who you hang out with the most, and you've got to sort of detoxify your company, detoxify everything that comes into your mind, and really get yourself some purity in the thoughts and some peace in the thoughts. And simply that means detoxifying from the perpetual bombardment of fear in the media. Perhaps some discussions we have with friends and family need to be diverted in a different direction or even ended. And then at nighttime, and this is a big deal, Clay and everybody and you guys, because if we're not sleeping well, sleep is one of the most underappreciated things that we do from simply a longevity standpoint, just a restorative standpoint. And at nighttime, and I highly recommend, it's just a couple things, just a tip. Turn off the media, turn off the TV at least 2 hours before you want to go to bed. Turn off the white lights, the blue lights. Turn on the red lights, the yellow lights. Begin to wind it down. I didn't say to wind it down, but wind it down. Going to clarify that with you all. And then make sure you're fasted during that time. So don't eat late either. And, of course, no caffeine, as you know. And work on getting that 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep, because that's the only way we're going to be able to deal with the stress that is. Some of the stress that we're talking about that drives fear, you just can't get away from it. It's really about processing it differently, or perhaps redoing your filter so it doesn't become something that leaks into your life on a perpetual basis. So, in other words, we don't want to deny it, that it's there, and be ignorant of it and be ill-informed and not listen to, Thrive Time Show, et cetera. We know what's going on, but we don't want to let it consume us, because if we're not managing life and we're not managing stress, I promise you life and stress will manage us.
Now, it's a real challenging time, and I want to make sure listeners understand this. We have listeners right now who I've talked to this week who have told me for sure that they have lost their entire business. All of it. All of it. We have our friend Ian Smith, the gym owner in New Jersey, who has been fined $173,000 was seized out of his bank account. Ian Smith, the gym owner from Tucker Carlson.
$15,000 a day.
$15,000 a day he's fined for committing the crime of opening his company. He's been fined over $1 million thus far. His actual cash was seized. So you can't just ignore it, but you got to learn how to deal with it. So give us 3 action steps all the listeners can take right now at this very moment if we want to take the stress off without just ignoring what is going on.
Well, I think number one is to acknowledge it, but also with the idea of not consuming it is take a perspective of temporary versus permanent. Now, this is a hard one to get, but I can guarantee you that the person in the presidency right now, Joe Biden, there will be an election in 4 years. That puts it on a temporary standpoint versus permanent. Whether people like that or not, whether you're for him or against him, that's irrelevant. But just know things are temporary. So that's number one. Number two, you got to get some physical activity. The only way to metabolize adrenaline and these catecholamines that sort of drive these stress pathways and these adrenal pathways is physical activity. And that means every single day you're alive, you need to move. And that means dedicated time towards physical activity. And I recommend 30 minutes minimum every day.
Every day?
Physical activity. Every single day. The only day you're alive that you're not breathing, that's the day you don't exercise. Move. And I didn't say hard, but the bottom line is walk, bike, run, whatever you do, get some physical activity. I mentioned the second thing is sleep. And the third thing, which sounds like a broken record, but it really is true, is we have to understand that comfort food eating is not comfort food eating. It's actually poison in our bodies. So put good food in our bodies instead of just allowing the stress to drive us down pathways that we don't want to go and we're going to regret. So you mentioned earlier at the top of the show, living in regret. I think in those three areas, it is really looking at yourself at the end of the day and saying, I don't regret anything I did. I don't regret anything I said, and I don't regret anything I did and put in my mouth or my ears or my head or specifically my heart. And if we can live like that, we can manage this okay. It's going to suck for a while. Yep. It is. It might suck for a little bit, but it's okay. We are strong people, and we're strong patriots in this country, and we can work together and find resolve in the middle of these problems we have, Clay, because, look, strength comes from resistance. There is no way any of us are going to get resilient if we don't have resistance. And this is a resistance we have. We've got to fight back, push back against that fear, get stronger so that the next time the fear comes, it doesn't do what it did this time to the American citizens.
Well, Dr. Mark, I appreciate you joining us. It turns out your recommendations were right. Dr. Z, as you're walking in here, we have Dr. Mark Sherwood. We're talking about, how to deal with people who are scared about the future of America. And I was asking him, I said, do you recommend watching Red Dawn on repeat? Is that something you'd recommend?
I watched it twice last night, as a matter of fact. So
turns out he does not recommend that.
While drinking the caffeine.
Yeah, and I said, would you recommend drinking caffeine late at night while watching Red Dawn? Turns out both of those, Z, were not recommended. Also, Schindler's List is not on the list of things to watch before bed. That was
How about The Piano Man? That's another one, right? Isn't that it, The Piano?
I haven't seen
The Piano. What is it? The Piano Dude? The Piano something?
I'm going to leave you out on that limb right there. I can't. I don't know.
It's not about Elton John either. So it's I know that's what you're thinking.
Rocket,
Billy Joel.
It's
Billy Joel,
Rocket.
this Piano Man.
Well, Dr. Mark, I appreciate you for joining us. If people out there want to improve their overall ability to fight disease, on a practical level, if people want to do that, they want to improve their body's ability, their immune system's ability to fight against disease and viruses of all kinds. What's your website and where can people learn more?
We are at Sherwood.tv, have blogs, podcasts, etc., and we're glad to help anyone wherever you are across this country and world.
And Dr. Mark, just on ending notes here, do you have a guarantee that if I follow your system, my body will be a wonderland?
Well,
I mean,
can guarantee this, and I can guarantee everyone this, is if you'll follow what we ask persons to do, your health will improve without question, and that measurable of the health will also improve, whether that be biomarkers, whether that be body composition, whether it be overall feelings of well-being, whether it be longevity markers. So, the improvement is relative to each of us, but absolutely yes, our processes work for everyone 100% of the time.
Dr. Z, all I heard right now was a yes.
I'm pretty sure I get a certificate, and it does say your body is certified a wonderland. Yes.
If it's okay, I do want to give the listeners some positive news here. I mean this sincerely, positive news. Every listener who's reached out to us who takes budesonide or ivermectin has not died from COVID-19. That's a good thing. Also, if you take the protocols that Dr. Mark Sherwood recommends proactively. You won't die from COVID-19. And Dr. Mark, if people want to reach out to you and get that information so they can proactively prepare their body for to fight against any viruses, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, just send an email. You can send it to my personal email. It's fine, Mark, M-A-R-K. Send it to Mark, M-A-R-K, at FMIDR.com, and that stands for short Functional Medical Institute Doctor. So Mark at FMIDR.com. I'm glad to give them the protocols. We give it all the time.
And Z, one more positive thing for America is apparently Joe Biden is such a phenomenal president that he was able to convince the World Health Organization, or maybe they just unrelated, decided to admit that the high cycle PCR tests are actually responsible for the high number of cases. I put a link here for you.
Oh, yeah.
And so
I've heard that, yes.
And so now the cases are going down. I mean, it was within days of taking over.
Oh, man.
As the president of the United States, all of a sudden the cases are they're going down. California is opening up.
Shocking.
It's amazing the coincidental timeline of how just the aura of Joe Biden has been able to decrease, just the presence of Joe Biden with his outstanding speaking and leadership skills, his ability to articulate off the cuff in the moment, his ability to gather thousands of people to cheer for him all over the country. That is somehow allowed. I mean, seriously, all of a sudden these states are opening unrelated, I'm sure.
Unrelated, of course.
I'm sure.
And just to wrap up, because I know some listeners out there are really bothered about my movie choice, to pile on to the ones you had. It's The Pianist. And it's
what?
It's a pianist. It's
you are
2002 war drama,
not that kind of show.
And it's about the man's survival. You know, from the Holocaust. He was Jewish, and since he could play the piano really well, they had him pulled out, and they didn't whack him. And so he got to play the piano for all the all the German.
Please make sure you enunciate very well when we're talking about whacking the pianist.
Well, wow. I could see where a guy like you.
I'm just saying.
I could see where, you know what? I forgot Aaron was on the show.
Well, folks, we'll end it on a low note. All right.
Okay, there we go.
Mark. Dr. Mark Sherwood, I appreciate you joining us. Thank you for bringing some positivity and some optimism to the listeners, and we hope you have a great rest of your day, sir.
My body's a wonderland.
Bye. All right, now before we wrap up today's edition of the Thrive Time Show, so many small business owners have been reaching out to us to ask how they can gain access to the Paycheck Protection Program funding, round 2. Some might call it round 3. But again, if your business has been affected negatively by government's response to COVID-19, we want you to have access to the Paycheck Protection Program funding as fast as possible. And so I reached out to my friend Brett Denton. His name is Brett Denton. He's with a company and organization called A10 Capital. And Brett Denton has been a longtime client and friend based in Boise, Idaho. And Brett Denton will help you quickly apply for the Paycheck Protection Program funding and to help you secure the lifeline that your business may need during this trying time. So again, if you're looking for the Paycheck Protection Program funding, the next round, I would encourage you to write the number down right now. Just write this number down immediately. The number is 208-991-6537. That number is 208-991-6537. Just text the number 208-991-6537. That goes direct to Brett Denton, and then Brett Denton will pick up the phone. He'll give you a call, and he'll help you get through the application process as soon as possible. There is a very limited amount of funding available, and it's first come, first served. So you do want to apply right now for the Paycheck Protection Program funding if that is what your business needs. Again, text the number 208-991-6537. Text the number 208-991-6537 to get in touch with Brett Denton of A10 Capital, based up there in Boise, Idaho, so he can help you get the Paycheck Protection Program funding that you and your business need. And now, without any further ado, we like to end each and every show with a boom. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, boom.